Businesses count on IT heroes to save the day every day. And now that the office can be anywhere, you need the unrivaled built-for-business PC platform that offers the manageability and security IT heroes need on the premium laptops your teams want. The Intel Evo vPro platform gives you the superpowers to do it all. This totally integrative package gives your team an unrivaled business laptop experience that's ready to get to work whenever and wherever they are. It also helps maximize productivity and collaboration and lets your team stay in the zone all day long. Plus, the Intel Evo vPro platform provides the security, manageability, and stability you need to be the greatest IT hero the world's ever seen. It provides comprehensive hardware-based security with below-the-OS protection, application and data security, and advanced threat detection. It gives you the power to update, restore, and secure your fleet remotely, even if a system is outside the firewall and won't boot. And smooth PC fleet management is yours with the reliable, validated, and stable platform that helps ensure image and driver compatibility when you add new devices. The Intel Evo vPro platform, built to do what IT heroes need and users want. It's built for business.
The Intel vPro platform is built for business and lets us manage our PC fleet remotely. It's like our entire fleet is spread across the galaxy. And we have hardware-based security to defend against attacks. So we can secure and manage them without disturbing anyone.
Get performance, security, manageability, and stability for the entire PC fleet.
A very good evening and a very warm welcome to the Day 10 International MSME Day, 27 June 2021, to the show Enterprise Matters. I am Sushma Morthania, Director General India SME Forum, wishing all our viewers, entrepreneurs, members, friends, a very, very happy and a very successful International MSME Day. Today, we are on the 10th and the last day of this 10-day agenda, where we were celebrating and deliberating and discussing what will it take and how do we contribute to the 5 trillion economy dream that our Honorable PM has envisioned for this country. Over the last days, we discussed about the architecture of this dream. We discussed about what people have written and decoded about this dream. We discussed about what are the elements, support and facilitation and areas where MSMEs would need help or they need to focus on to integrate their role and contribution towards building this 5 trillion economy. We also discussed about the role of women entrepreneurs in particular to build this dream. And of course, we spoke about innovation. We spoke about cluster-based development. We spoke about technology upgradation, quality, standards, and various other aspects that go into creating a successful enterprise, eventually creating jobs and, of course, building the economy of a country. So once again, wishing all our viewers a very happy International MSME Day. And we start our proceedings by starting our special focus session today.
The Intel vPro platform is built for business and lets us manage our PC fleet remotely. It's like our entire fleet is spread across the galaxy. And we have hardware-based security to defend against attacks. So we can secure and manage them without disturbing anyone.
Get performance, security, manageability, and stability for the entire PC fleet.
Welcome back to the special focus session of Enterprise Matters. Today, we are discussing strategies for amplifying MSME development in the 5 trillion economy. And we have very special guests today. In fact, our chief guest for today's program, may I take the pleasure of inviting Shri B. Swain, IAS Secretary, MSME, Government of India. A very hearty welcome to you, sir, and very good evening. I would like to tell our viewers that sir has been very kind to grace and accept our invitation in spite of he's still recuperating and recovering. He was suffering from COVID and he's still recuperating. So we wish you good health, sir, always. And once again, thanks, sir. To join, sir, I am requesting Dr. Rennie Van Berkel, UNIDO representative and head, regional office in India. Mr. Vincent Van Noord, Director, Europe, European Business and Technology Center.
Namaskar.
Welcome. Shri Nilay Verma, Managing Partner, Primus Partners. Good evening, Nilay ji.
Good evening, Shifna ji.
Shri Hemendra Mathur, Partner, Bharat Innovation Fund. Good evening, Hemendra ji. Good to see you.
Good evening, Sushma, and good evening to everyone.
To join the panel, I am going to request our President, Shri Vinod Kumar, President India SME Forum. Before we start today's deliberation, I'm going to request our Honorable Secretary, Shri Swain, to say a few words as keynote and set the context for today's session and advise us on a roadmap on what strategies we need to adopt for contributing towards MSME development and building this 5 trillion economy. Sir, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Sushma ji. I think I'll leave the setting of the context to Mr. Vinod Kumar, who will be eminently suitable for this, and will have great knowledge on this. Because of the post-COVID situation, I have to give a little apology. I can't speak too much. Anyway, let us start. My greetings to Dr. Rennie Van Berkel, Mr. Vincent Noord, Mr. Nilay Verma, Mr. Hemendra Mathur, Sri Vinod Kumar, Srimati Sushma Murthania, and all the esteemed panelists and delegates, ladies and gentlemen. It's really nice to meet all of you on a very, very day, very, very special to us, the International MSME Day. Very obviously for my ministry, an extremely significant day. And I'm really pleased to be part of this kind of a concluding session for this sessions organized on Indian MSMEs in the 5 trillion economy, organized by the India SME Forum. Uh, before I could speak maybe a little on this particular topic, I would like all of us to remember the wonderful contribution of our ex-industry secretary and one of my closest friends, Dr. Guru Prasad Mahapatra, who lost the battle to COVID. And as you know that when the oxygen crisis was at its peak, Dr. Mahapatra fought a very valiant battle. In fact, in the best tradition of our civil service, he continued working till he was actually in an ICU. And at some point of time, even the phone had to be taken away from him because he was still monitoring the situation. Apart from everything, he was almost like my elder brother. It has come as a great shock to us. At the same time, we do celebrate the great contribution he did to this country over a long period of public service. He has been well known. He was a great human being. He touched people in so many ways that today we keep meeting people, both in the service, outside it, in every possible sector, who still talk about the wonderful way in which Dr. Mahapatra does them. I just thought that while starting this deliberation on the International MSME Day, we'll be doing our service also to the memories of Dr. Mahapatra, whom we truly miss today. MSMEs are an integral part of the value chain. I think when we talk about the 5 million trillion economy, this is the core of the role of MSMEs. It's an integral part of the value chain, offering diversified products on one hand and delivering intermediate goods to the large-scale industries. It is and always will be one of the largest employment generators and backbone of our economy. The pandemic period has seen a call for opportunities and innovations in all areas: production of services, business models, or reaching customers for MSMEs. These are probably the keys to the success. Technology has enhanced outreach and penetration by SMEs to reach their customers within and across geographies. Technology as an enabler today is helping MSMEs and will definitely be a very important factor in reviving and the emergence of a stronger economy and revival and emergence of MSMEs. I'm sure through this conference, we'll be able to create awareness on the recent technological changes and the benefits of adopting them. Ministry of MSMEs is focused on meeting the financial and technology requirement of MSMEs through various initiatives and reinventing the existing scheme to accommodate the needs of MSMEs. Today in the ministry, we are looking at each of the scheme because by coincidence, this is the period when Government of India looks at all its schemes. It's a standard method taken for 5 years for the next 5 years expenditure. This is the best time to kind of re-engineer the schemes which we are running for the last 5 years, to go for third-party evaluations to find out what could be the changes. So that way, I would say 21 is actually a very significant year for my ministry, where we have been given an opportunity to look at the schemes. We are doing intensive stakeholder consultation. Our target is quite obvious. We want our schemes, which are already transparent, to be more and more transparent, to be more pragmatic, more attuned to the needs of MSMEs. And I mean, simplification is the key. This is what, if you would have heard my Honorable Minister, Mr. Gadkari, he keeps focusing on this particular concept. We need to be simple. Today, I attended a function organized by CII, where I was very happy when Mr. Chandrajit Banerjee, with whom I had a discussion before about 2-3 months, and I had particularly requested him that all organizations should focus on the language, the regional languages, because while we continue to use English, to certain extent Hindi, the fact remains is quite a huge segment of our clientele, and in particular, obviously, if we look at the micro sector, do need the communication in the language which they ordinarily use, which they speak, which they read. And I was very happy to see that CI is an organization which has taken up the initiative. They're working through that is what Dr. Banerjee told me, that they are working through the 63 offices in India, where they expect that in a few months they could be coming up with a lot of communication strategies which uses regional languages. Another sector where you definitely were working with many organizations, particularly extremely important organizations for us, extremely important stakeholders like India SME Forum, is digital literacy, which I feel is a sector which has opened up its possibilities during this particular pandemic period. I'm quite sure the challenges of MSMEs will be met through a combination of strategies, governance strategies, strategy of the associations, and MSMEs themselves. From the ministry side, please stay assured that we will give all support in all our schemes towards a more simplified, more transparent view towards the development of MSMEs. I'll have to stop here because I'm already feeling it. I hope you don't mind. In fact, the medical advice is you should not go beyond 5 or 10 minutes. Thank you for the attention. And I'll be leaving. I will definitely remember to take the video because I believe it is being recorded from Mrs. Morthania, and I would love to have a look at all your videos.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, thank you very much, sir, for your time and spending your, views.
Thank you.
So he had to leave because his doctors have advised him actually to not speak for more than 5 to 7 minutes. And that's why he had to excuse himself. So anyways, we are very grateful to our secretary, sir, for being there and sharing his vision about, MSME development. With that, I would like to pass on to Vinod, sir, to continue with this panel today. And we would like to, in fact, create a strategy and create a roadmap, which we would like to take on further and work in that direction, take on that mandate on us, and be very serious and in a very concrete manner plan and work towards building this economy. So with that, over to you, Vinod, sir.
Thank you, Sushmaji. I should acknowledge the fact that a lot of officers, a lot of citizens in India have lost their lives to COVID. There's no two ways about it. It's been a very disheartening a couple of years that we've all been through. Rene is now back safely in Netherlands. So he had the opportunity to go away. So we didn't. We're still here. And but I'm sure Rene has been on lots of conferences in the last few days. I've been seeing him. So are all of us. So with that, I'd like to move forward. We all know that the MSME sector has emerged as a very dynamic sector for the Indian economy, with almost 99% of enterprises now being adjudged as micro, small, medium enterprises, especially after the change of definition. And everybody understands the fact that development of this sector is vital to meet the national objectives of financial inclusion, employment generation across all sorts of areas. It could be urban, rural, semi-urban, or all sorts of areas. And on one hand, we found that globalization has created significant economic opportunities for nations and companies around the world to access the world market, while other countries have also strived. Consequently, India has also strived to keep up with the global market emerging dynamics by constantly revisiting our various policies. And the relative competitiveness of MSME units in India in the global supply chain continues to remain in a nascent stage, I would say. And there's a need to better integrate MSMEs into global supply and value chains, either directly or through larger companies. We had a lot of discussions in the recent last 10 days on various ideas, I would say, on various strategies. And today I feel it's time again to revisit a lot of things that we've learned in the past 8-10 days on how MSMEs have sort of disrupted. Some have actually shut down, some have actually gone ahead and are sort of revamping, reorienting, and so on and so forth. And with this background, I'd like to go to Rene first. Rene, we started this getting back business for MSME, bringing back business, or B3C for MSME last year on the same day. So it's been 1 year exactly that we've launched it. And Unido and I have collaborated on that. So what are the learnings? Have MSMEs sort of taken up the challenge, and have they been resilient? What have, according to you, what have they done over the last year and a half?
Yes, thank you, Vinod, and thank you indeed to India SME Forum for inviting UNIDO as the UN Industrial Development Organization to be part of this today. And I think I also wish to wish everyone, particularly MSME fraternity, a happy World Environment Day. And I think that what we are seeing above all is that MSMEs continue to be heavily impacted by the COVID pandemic. Some firms have been able to do well by stepping up to supply the pandemic response goods, such as the personal protective equipment, the pharmaceuticals, and lower-cost medical devices, and also stepped in the services area, particularly with the digital services. You can also say that most firms have been able to cushion the adverse impact by going virtual and accelerating their transition to e-commerce. However, I think nevertheless, across the board, MSMEs are reeling under the impact with widespread losses in terms of sales, profits, and employment. And in this regard, maybe I can share a few thoughts on that UNIDO, as part of a global initiative to monitor then the impact of and the recovery from the crisis in manufacturing, conducted a survey of manufacturing firms during April and May 2021, completed by 438 Indian firms. And 61 of the respondents reported actually declined sales, against 14 reporting increased sales. So 31 out of the total, 38% reported declines in sales by 50% or more. Or in other words, one could say that 1 in 3 firms lost at least half of its sales. And then the picture on profits is near identical. 51% reports a decline in profits against 8% reporting an increase. So look at it more specifically, you could see that 33% reported a decrease in profits by 50% or more. Again, which translates back to 1 in 3 firms lost half of their profits. There are, though, very big sectoral differences. You might say that the services sector has suffered more than other industries, in particular hospitality, travel, and related sectors. And within manufacturing, there is clearly a split between the vulnerable industries, which we could say that at the global level have been more adversely impacted, such as garment, footwear, furniture, equipment, and beverages, and resilient industries that have at the global level been less impacted, particularly food, pharma, chemicals, plastics, and automotive. If you just look at our data, then among the small manufacturers, it was found that sales in decline in vulnerable industries was about 75% higher than in resilient industries, and profit decline about 30% larger for vulnerable industries compared to resilient industries. 50% of the firms had laid off staff, 70% of respondents even laid off more than half of their respective workforces. There's been profound gender dimension to the layoffs, which is also of a concern. Among all categories of responding firms, the share of females among those laid off was larger than the share of females in their total workforce. This indicated that women employed by these firms had more likely been laid off. So some up to something like 1 in 5 of the respondents reported have benefited from government stimulus package Atmani Bharat. Half of those benefited in terms of access to new credit, about 1/3 in terms of deferral or suspension of interest payment, and about a quarter from deferral of tax payments. So these figures, I guess, are illustrative for the impact, and we can drill down. And I think it's just illustrative, whether it's 1% more or less. I think it doesn't really matter that much. And I think that overall, we have seen that the financial worries have taken the sort of center stage. But we have already said, and Vinod, you were referring to that there are underlying factors which lead to this and which need to be addressed. You cannot just solve by just injecting cash. One would need to also look at underlying factors. And we last year we already identified that it was really the uncertainty that is what is going to happen with the pandemic, society, and policy. Then we have issues around the markets, which have become unpredictable. And there are concerns about the availability of workforce, but also then necessary measures to zero out the infection risks in the workplace. And then we had the burden of decaying stocks and equipment and disruption of supply chains. Together with the India SME Forum and UN India Business Forum, we put on together this B3C MSME.org, Building Back Business from Crisis knowledge platform. And I think that on one hand provides a bit of a roadmap to suggest to MSMEs that plan where you want to be, then look very carefully at your workplace so that the places are safe for your people to return to work, and then restart in an organized manner, and then try to grow on the basis of your core competencies. I think that or even though it's very hard to make generalizations, and maybe I conclude there with my first remarks, but we can discuss further on. I think that we get a tendency that the firms which are better managed and have been more proactive and endorsed and embraced change have been the ones which are doing relatively better right now. So it's really so that that companies that are the smaller units that have adopted some of the established and known management practices and manufacturing practices that you could consider as best practices are really the ones that are doing relatively better than the other ones. So maybe that I would like to leave it there as a first impression. We can discuss a little bit more on what to do on global value change and so on.
Absolutely.
Yes.
That makes me, actually look at some basic issues. While on one hand we have MSMEs which are grappling with a lack of competitiveness, especially when they are compared to global counterparts, the issue is somewhere structural. Our MSMEs are not becoming larger and scaling, with 95% of the estimated 60 million odd MSMEs in India continuing to be micro enterprises throughout their life cycle. With obviously they have limited means, limited aspirations, and somehow subscale units are always tied to low productivity. So the vicious cycle continues.
Yes.
So, this question is to Nilay. Nilay, what do you think should be done to resolve structural issues to make scaling up lucrative for Indian MSMEs? You are an expert on policies, so that side of the policing and structures better than any of us, I think.
Vinod, at the outset, thank you so much for inviting me. I just also wanted to highlight what Mr. Swain said. I think it was very thoughtful of him to talk about Mr. Guru Prasad Mahapatra. I just wanted to add to what he said. We lost a wonderful civil servant. I think, Vinod, there is no magic wand here. I think you're right. The issues with MSMEs are basic and they are structural. And if we need to address them, we need to be very, very structured in our intervention. And I would start by saying, and I'm just going to pick up the overall theme, Vinod, when you spoke about the 5 trillion economy. I think just 4 or 5 interventions or points that I wanted to make. I think the first recognition is we talk a lot about MSME, but I don't think we naturally think that 5 trillion economy cannot happen without MSME growing substantially. I think we just have to look at the global experience of countries which are 5 trillion and more, and what is the contribution of their small and medium enterprises, small and medium businesses, or MSMEs as we call, and recognize that we cannot achieve 5 trillion without MSMEs substantially scaling up. I think that's just the recognition we need to have. So, what does that really mean? You're also right, Vinod. Uh, we have ignited the ambition when we have reclassified the definition of MSME. But what we now need to do is follow up with real actions to see how are MSMEs growing? How is that ambition really translating on the ground? And let me start with a few specific suggestions. One, the entire policy making exercise, if you just look at each and every committee of the government that is set up, there is no MSME separate from the other economy, right? MSMEs is part of an economy. It's not, yes, we do have a separate ministry to bring in focus, but MSME is across every sector. And yet, my experience has been that whenever policy instruments are designed, very often for core industry, they are led. Well, let's take committees that are set up or expert teams that are set up. Very often, those expert teams, sector committees, of initiatives of the government hardly have any representative of MSME. I would start by saying that no policy in India, no committee of India should be set up without having at least one-third representative from MSME. I mean, you cannot, drive growth, because I think so. That's the first intervention I would say, because that's really starts by making sure we're thinking about MSME not as a separate aspect of MSME, but as a core aspect of growth. That's number one. I think the second point that I want to make is where India has made tremendous, strides on ease of doing business, and I've been part of that thing. But I think more than ease of doing business, although it's implicit, but I don't think it is really driven down at the core level, is the cost of doing business, especially the cost of doing business for MSMEs. And if you start calculating the cost of doing business for MSMEs, we'll probably get surprised how come even these many MSMEs survive and grow. And I think that's where our interventions on policy, especially around logistics and the cost of doing business, needs to come in if MSMEs have to be competitive. I would also make the third point here, two more quick points, Vinod, and then probably some of the other thoughts that I have later on. Third is we haven't leveraged the e-commerce platform or the new economy significantly enough for MSMEs. I think we have to see the platforms as as a real boon for MSMEs, whereas we continue to think of e-commerce platforms as large industries, whereas their biggest beneficiaries is MSME, and therefore, how do we drive that aspect very, very quickly? I mean, I don't have a point of view one way or the other, but very often we say that, look, if e-commerce platform delivers services, how would the small retailer benefit? The reality is the maximum jobs in manufacturing comes from in the MSME segment. So there are aspects that we really need to be very, very careful about as we try. And the last thing intervention that I would talk about is we probably need to completely relook at our skilling ecosystem. Today, government of India spends a significant amount of money on skilling, but it's all supply driven. If you look at where are the qualified people most needed, I think it's in MSME. If we can incentivize MSME to hire and pay people who are qualified, as opposed to spend money on making people job ready, which is taken largely by the large firms, I think we would have shifted the paradigm towards quality and aspects of that. So I think fundamentally, just to summarize, I think there is no magic bullet here. We need to do, as you said, structural reform and look at this long term if we have to change the paradigm of MSME in India.
Very, very apt, very rightly said, Nilay. In fact, I always felt that we also have a strong need to develop localized services, local networks across the country to enable governments, which are especially state governments, which are primarily the ones that have the responsibility of industries in their own country, in their own states, to expand economic hubs beyond tier 1 cities. Now, MSMEs also have a opportunity to actively shape this through forging partnerships with big players, especially with foreign entities. We've been talking about collaborations and joint ventures, especially with countries from Europe, who are looking at exploring the vast Indian market or setting up low-cost manufacturing bases. Now, most of these partnerships could actually present a significant opportunity for most MSMEs in India to scale faster, move up the value chain within a brief span of time. But the challenge remains, how can we do it? So maybe I get Vincent here in, and can you help us understand, Vincent, how can Indian MSMEs make the maximum out of this opportunity where we've all been talking about quite some time that the world needs a China plus one, and India can be that plus one. So what do you say about this?
Thanks, Vinod. Thanks for having me on this panel today. I'm very happy to be here. It's an honor and a pleasure. I hope I'm audible?
Yes, you are.
Yes? Yeah, okay,
yes.
Great. Yeah, so I think there's huge potential for the SME sector in India. Of course, they've taken quite a hit, and interesting figures that Renee has shared with us. But I think India is, and we talk about resilience, I think India is very, very resilient. I've been in India for about 14 years now, so in Delhi and in Goa, and I think the demand was not there so much in COVID. Demand is coming back, so that will create huge opportunities. The European market is, of course, always looking at the Indian market. It's a potential for massive growth opportunities, expansion, production, manufacturing, outsourcing. In order to work together, the European counterparts, they have certain standards and levels that they would need to adhere to, which on the Indian side I think is still in a little bit of a development phase. So if there are if there's a potential, I think for a European party to come into the Indian market is very complex. It's much better if you partner up. If you collaborate with an Indian partner, you can learn from each other. The Indian side has a lot of expertise and knowledge, and so does the European side. However, you need to, get to know each other. You need to start, on a smaller scale, maybe start dating. After dating, you start, you can probably get engaged potentially, and then finally you can get married. And in that whole process, when you get to know each other, cultural differences, mindset, work methods, etc., you can also start, bringing in the processes and the standards that are required. If you want to, there's a huge potential for the domestic market in India, but you can also create and develop and manufacture products that can also be exported to other parts of the world. This can be done, collaboratively. So I think there's massive potential, and the Europeans are definitely open for that. I think slowly but surely the Indian market is also becoming, getting there. So we speak to companies on a daily basis on the European side, and they're very much looking forward to this. But I think the approach is important. You cannot just jump into bed. It's a slow and phased manner that you have to work at this. But ultimately, I think it has a lot of potential.
Thank you. That was quick. In fact, I continue to hear. So, Hemendra, we're talking about a lot about this intention of a lot of global organizations to move deeply integrated supply chains out of China and relocate to India, especially in a lot of tech sectors, manufacturing sectors. Now, most Indians view this as an opportunity, but we all talked about the need for a lot of work to be done on the ground to reap any benefit from any of these moves. So according to you, you especially work in the agro and food processing sector extensively. According to you, what sector-specific strategies should be formulated to make best use of this opportunity that we have?
Thanks, Vinod, and congratulations to everyone on the MSME Day. And special thanks to Vinod and Sushma, who have been working on in this sector for so many years. I really salute their commitment. So thanks very much for inviting me, and please continue your work to boost MSME sector. Now, coming to a specific question, Vinod. So yeah, I think the topic of the day is what MSME should do to get to a $5 trillion, economy size. And given my experience in the food and agri sector, I would say their contribution should be at least 20%. $1 trillion should come from food economy in next 5 to 10 years. And if we are already at about, I think, 500 to $600 billion. So it's another $400 billion that this sector has to add to get to $1 trillion food economy. And I have no doubt in my mind that this is bound to happen. Now, I
The
think
minister has been saying, Hemendra, the minister has been saying that there is requirement. He wants MSMEs to grow to somewhere around $2.5 billion. That is the aim of the government as far as MSMEs are concerned.
absolutely.
Please continue.
No, absolutely. I don't think without MSME contribution, our economy is going to get to the target of $5 trillion. I think he's absolutely right. Um, Again, I think from a food processing and agro processing sector, I want to add a few points. First of all, this MSMEs are the backbone of this whole sector. But if you look at their struggles, clearly it's one is the cost of capital. That continues to be very high. Most of the food processing companies are very working capital intensive. Their debtor days are 90 to 120 days, sometimes 180 days. They keep inventory because your raw materials are available for a specific period of time. Let's say 30 days to 90 days, and then you process it for rest of the year, right? So it's extremely working capital intensive industry, and the cost of capital varies from, let's say, 12% to 18%, which I think is very high and makes this industry uncompetitive. So I think that's one area we have to do something about it. Second area, I would say that which MSME have to change a lot, and I think some of my fellow panelists also pointed out, the whole processing sector has still focused on primary processing, sorting, grading, packing, some bit of milling and pulverizing, etc. And that's why the margins looks very shaky. Typical gross margins of 10 to 15% and EBITDA of 5% and PAT of 1 or 2%. I don't think that's the balance sheet we want to look at. And that's why the credit ratings of most of the MSM in the sector is BBB minus or double B, but not a double A plus or A plus, right?
Yes.
So I think that's extremely important that these MSME have to fundamentally change their business model, focusing more on value addition. And why I'm saying this, because timing is right. The consumer is willing to pay. If you look at the COVID times, the demand for processed food, immunity builders, and health foods and nutritious food is like multiplied 10x. So I think there's an opportunity to make money. So why MSMEs are still being a commodity player, that really worries me. So they have to change fundamentally, invest in R&D, invest in value addition. I think the good part is the second generation in MSME or the third generation in MSME is coming, and they understand that that's extremely important. And if they are able to do it, I'm sure their ability to raise more money, their ability to raise private equity, venture capital will go up multiple times, and hopefully the cost of debt also come down. I think the third aspect, which is very critical, I don't know, maybe I'm not tuned in enough, but how integrated is our MSME sector with digital economy? I think it's not a choice anymore. We have to focus on whole supply chain integration, and more so in a sector like food and agriculture, where between farmer and consumer, there are like 12 intermediaries, which makes the whole supply chain extremely inefficient. Now, fortunately, if you look at the agriculture side or the farming side, and I work a lot with a lot of agri and food startups, I think they're doing phenomenal job digitizing the whole agricultural supply chain, right from selling farm inputs to farmer advisory to data, using satellite imagery, drones, IoT sensors, and also doing some post-harvest intervention in terms of farm level processing and value addition. And I think that's where MSME and this whole startup ecosystem, which is so digitally tuned, need to talk to each other. I don't see that's happening. They're like two different worlds. So I think that integration has to happen. Probably policy has a role to play, properly SME forum or people like us who probably understand both the worlds have a role to play, but that's important. And likewise on the front end side, I think someone mentioned about e-commerce. And take it from me, the whole game is changing, the whole distribution channel dynamics is changing. The D2C revolution, there's an estimate that the D2C opportunity, as in direct to consumer opportunity, is $100 billion. That's hell lot of a money. And who's going to be the vendor? It will be the MSME. So I think that is where they should either work with the channels which are D2C oriented, or develop their own channels also. I think in today's world there is multiple horizontal and vertical channels and social e-commerce channels. So I think that's where the whole channel strategy has need a rethink, and conventional B2B mindset probably also need to change, right? The last but not the least, another point that I want to highlight is the opportunity in global market. And I think you mentioned about China plus one. I hope we can say India plus one. Let's see how long we get to that stage. But I think there's an opportunity. Again, I'll take example of food processing. For the first time in the history of independent India, we exported food products in excess of $40 billion. The export was $43 billion. I think last year was around $33 billion. So $10 billion of additional exports. And reason I can tell you, when COVID happened, countries like Middle East, Singapore, a lot of neighboring countries were running out of food. So let's accept it. We have a genuine strength in this area. We can be supplier to the world. But for that to happen, we need to invest in quality control, traceability. A lot of consignment leaving Indian shores have very high MRL content, which are not acceptable in a lot of importing nations. So we need to build that mindset. There's an opportunity to serve the global markets, but we have to change a supply chain, make it traceable, make it safe, make it transparent, and make it value added. I think that's where I'm sure we can get to $100 billion export market in food alone. And just imagine how much MSM is going to benefit if we are able to add that much of value. So I think there's an opportunity sitting with MSMEs. Of course, there are structural challenges, there are mindset, cultural challenges which has to change. But this is a very, very unique timing. I would say the next decade can transform the way we look at MSMEs, and I'm sure a lot of them can graduate to MSME plus in this journey. So I'll stop there.
Absolutely. You're absolutely all right. Yes, Nilay, you want to come in, Nilay?
Yeah, just wanted to Hemant made lots of very, very important points. I just wanted to highlight a couple of points that he said, and I just wanted to add my views to it. I think this one point that he mentioned about the working capital, or the days outstanding, as we would call it in commercial. I don't think any large economy in the world, and I'm sure we've got Rene and Vincent can talk about it, but my own experience is that any large economies like the UK, the US, etc., they have institutionally over a period of time ensured the economy works on less than between 15 to 30 days of credit. They've institutionalized it through policy intervention and other things, whereas in India, that's a very, very major bottleneck. And thin spreads and high working capital period it's just not possible to sustain, especially in an adverse event. So I just wanted to highlight that one point. And the second point, again, just to build on what Hemant said, very often we haven't realized the impact or the potential of the food processing sector. I think it's a place where MSMEs have a major role to play, especially the second generation and the third generation entrepreneurs who are moving away from villages, but can be a great source of driving growth, along with the fact that this entire wellness and the entire Indian aspect of Ayurveda and Indian medicine and many other things, which is so unique to India, is again an opportunity for global, rather than always talking about just doing the supply chain or a manufacturing automotive. Yes, those are happening, but we need to create new markets for India. And I think a lot of focus is required in that. My understanding is Chinese medicine is something that's $1 billion economy around the world. I think as a heritage and as an understanding, we've got 6 lakh certified Vaidyas. If we can just bring all of that knowledge together to drive that particular market by standardization and quality. I think that's another very, very big opportunities for MSME, rather than just trying to do fabrication and low-end job.
Just to add to Nilaya's point, I think one very quick point. If you look at Ayurveda in particular, we have ashwagandha. We have probably the largest producer of ashwagandha in the world. And Chinese has their own variant. It's called ginseng or something.
Ginseng, yes.
Yeah, they monopolize the world market. If you sell ashwagandha in India, it's like less than 300 rupees a kg, the powder form. US, it sells 900 rupees a kg. Just with some little bit value addition, but that's happening offshore, as in the US market, not in India. So why do we want to leave that opportunity? We have phenomenal inherent strengths, and ashwagandha is just one example. Look at moringa. There's so much of demand in the world market. It's like touted as the next big super food. It's not available in many markets. Millets, we have totally ruined our millet economy because of paddy and wheat culture. And I think it's time to go back to millets and build products for the world market. We are importing quinoa and all kind of exotic products from outside India at such a high price. Why can't we build up products of our own which have proven that they're pretty good for health, for immunity, they consume much less water and stuff like that. So I think we need to relook, again, going back to food processing, we need to relook at the entire sector, right from crop diversification to value addition, to make our supply chain globally competitive.
I completely agree. Rene, would you like to comment on, you see, we keep on talking about this great export potential that India has. And I keep on hearing, I've been to WTO and a couple of other meetings around the world, and we keep on talking about what are you guys doing about, the fact that you can easily double or triple your current export of commodities, for that matter. Services anyway are, progressing as they are. And I've always felt that we need a targeted export strategy. Even our, total exports, I was amazed to figure out that at any point in time, you don't have more than 33,000 enterprises which are exporting. Now look at the entire number of enterprises that we have. We're talking about 60 million enterprises, and the number of exporters, we're talking about 33,000 odd at any point in time. So there's a huge gap there. Most enterprises are not, oriented also on exports. They don't even understand the fact that, there is a potential in their very own product. So how do we focus on export-led growth when we are primarily talking about every economist is saying that, even ITC is saying that we have the potential to go from a $300 billion worth of commodities export to take it to as high as $50 billion.
Yes, you put the bar high in terms of expectation of what I can and can answer. But let me reflect a little bit on a few points that were made earlier on, because we talked about 50% contribution by MSME sector, and as India is still far from that, or relatively far. I think it's about 1/3 right now. But this 50% seems to be quite an acceptable or reachable number, and 50% of GDP and 70% of jobs. That seems to be an attainable number across the world. But I think that you've already highlighted a bit, Vinod, in your first introduction, that we see not a growth trajectory, and one might also say, some have argued that we don't see the middle lands. We see lots of micro enterprise, and we see some of the larger enterprises. We don't see the typical SMEs, and if you look globally, then the SMEs are the growth engines. So it's not the micro enterprises that are dominated in large numbers, but it is really the smaller and medium-sized enterprise. Small can become medium can become large. And we need to keep in mind that with the new definitions which came into force a year ago, have actually put the bar quite high. If you say 50 crore investment or 250 crores sales, that in an international context, that are quite large corporations. So I guess that one of the biggest challenges is that we need to differentiate between what we want to grow in this MSME segment. It's such a vast landscape that we need a bit of the, let's call it horses for course. So we need differentiated strategies to grow, to accelerate growth. And if we talk about export-led growth, we should really focus on the SMEs, perhaps more than just on the micro enterprises. That is my first comment. Then I think that a lot of talk is then on linking into global value change, or I think that the UNIDO work is really saying that it's the fragmentation of production and value creation over different geographies and then specific advantages. But really what the work of the UNIDO, UNCTAD and World Bank has shown is that it's not so much global value change, it's more regional production networks. So we have 3 major hubs, one around East Asia, one in Europe and one in North America. And we need to look at those regional hubs more than a global address. And maybe there's time for a 4th regional production network around India, South Asia. And I think that also it does not necessarily drive upgradation of the manufacturing sector. So what is necessary for the integration in global value chains is really that we drive on this manufacturing competence. And this is really a bit of the issue, because with all the comments I just made on the diversity in MSMEs, I think the unfortunate truth is that a lot of the MSMEs are kind of, if I may call it, second best. And with this mentality, and many MSME entrepreneurs are also quite fine with that. I can't reach to the same quality, so I sell something at lower quality. And that was also referred to earlier on in terms of value change of selling commodities in the international market. There is just always declining space for second quality. So we need to get this quality and manufacturing excellence, productivity mindset in there. So that has very much been the work that UNIDO is then also trying to emphasize, that we need to I sometimes say we need to clean out the manufacturing shops, because I speak, of course, a little bit out of manufacturing. We need a swatch ujok, so to really go through manufacturing places and make them efficient, make them lean, make them also mature with digital capabilities, but not only in the e-commerce, but also in terms of the e-manufacturing, advanced digital production technologies. And then, of course, we can look at some of the international work that is being done by like UNCTAD, which then looked at revealed competitive advantages of India. And then there are some where this really highlighted, and I think it's still very high aggregate area, but where India stands out is on rice, spices, and seafood, on specialty chemicals and dyestuffs, on precious stones, jewelry, cotton, and other vegetable textile fibers, and then selected textile items, including the technical textiles and floor covering. I think that there could be really, rather than saying we want to be a global manufacturing hub, let us say where we want to be a global manufacturing hub, and then look for integrated strategies building on this manufacturing excellence, and then combine our work, which has been very strong on ease of doing business, combine that with sectoral strategies, a decent industrial policy, which cuts across some of these sectors, which one might say have international perspective from international trade analysis. Thank you.
Cool. In fact, on this, I'd like to go to Vincent. We talk about we need to be a more attractive destination for a large amount of FDI to flow in. And I find that a lot of, the FDI that is attracted into India is primarily due to our services sector, which has come in. And is that so because of availability of skilled labor, for use in the services industry than in manufacturing? So do you find a connection between the FDI that is coming in and the fact that we have a lot of skill deficit in manufacturing, so it's not coming in, Vincent? Or do you feel that it is coming in because we have a lot more, I would say, science students, a lot more people that are technically qualified engineers and so on and so forth, which don't want to go into manufacturing? They all want to be in the digital economy. FDI is coming in from, I guess, mainly from the big players. If you look at it, multinationals, like the IKEAs of the world, etc., who have the financial means, who have the bandwidth, who have the patience, etc. And if you look at the SME market, of course, they
all these things that are not there. And of course, there's a lot of talent in India, very young population, very vibrant, very hungry for work. But I think there's a bit of a gap still. If you look at when you want FDI from SMEs, they were looking maybe for talent that can jump in immediately. So I think there might be a bit of a gap there. So I think it's a little bit of a process where though the level, of course, of the skill is high, but still there need to be adapted to the standards and the expectations of the companies that are looking to invest in India. So I mean, it is there, it is possible. It's just a bit of a process. So I think everybody needs to work together a bit in order to make this happen. Yeah.
Cool. In fact, I've always been talking about these couple of things, in terms of how do you evaluate competitiveness of an MSME. So what I figured out was it was primarily about, your capacity to compete, your capacity to connect, and the capacity to change. Now, at each level, what you're talking about is if I have the capacity to compete, it's primarily centered on the present operation of the firm that I have and my efficiency in terms of cost, time, quality. And my capacity to change primarily is about my capacity to execute change or respond to or in anticipation of dynamic market forces. Whereas the capacity to connect, on the other hand, refers to gathering and exploiting business relevant information and knowledge and then connecting with the right people. So at each of these levels, what I find is, at a firm level, at a business environment level, and at a macro level. So there are three levels that I find we need to work. So at a firm level, we're talking about international quality certification. Most of us don't have it, or most of us don't even want it, or we're not even tuned to it. And then you have, even when you go on e-commerce, I found a lot of great success stories of people that have gone on to e-commerce, then learned the ropes. E-commerce for me, I think, is a great enabler for small, medium enterprises who are trying to learn and approach markets and figure out what is selling, what sort of qualities, what sort of packaging, what sort of brands, and what sort of reactiveness in terms of how they deal with customers and all that. So at a firm level, what all do you guys think, all of you, about, how can we build this capacity at the firm level to compete, to connect, and to change?
If I can come,
it's also mindset, right? It's also mindset. I mean,
yes.
SMEs often they have a promoter, right? It's kind of like you can say like a lala, right? Where there's one gentleman on top who kind of controls the whole company. So he has to be in that mindset. He has to be in that frame of mind. I mean, we've been working with companies that into generators, for example, diesel generators, and now they want to do something. They want to diversify. They want to do something that's more sustainable, for example. And they are willing and open to engage with international counterparts and collectively develop products that are maybe somewhat in line, with their traditional business, but more in a sustainable manner. And so you have to work with those people. So I think if you don't have that mindset, it's very, very complicated. And I think that's more, you can see a little bit more that happening in tier 1, tier 2 cities. Tier 3, tier 4, I think the mindset is a little bit different. So, but you have to start somewhere, right? So I think if you have some good stories, some success stories, then it'll spread. But there needs to be some, we have to showcase something and demonstrate that it can work and it can happen.
Hemendra, would you like to come in?
Yeah, so I was about to say what Vincent just said, that most of the MSMEs are controlled by family businesses. They continue to be family businesses. And that's where I think things need to change. I totally believe the strength which family businesses have, their ability to ride a down cycle, their ability to, their understanding of supply chain is absolutely 100%, no question. But when it comes to governance, I still see loopholes. And that's where they have to change, because if the governance is not right, whether it's a banker or an investor or a customer, everyone will find it difficult to work with those MSMEs. And that's where I think the role of digital economy comes in. Look, ultimately, digital economy is going to make things transparent. So as an MSME, you have to accept it. I have invested in a lot of MSMEs. So I always told them you can save their income tax for rest of your life, but you continue to be a 80 to 100 crore company. Or you pay your taxes and become a 1,000 crore company. So which where you want to go? So I think that's where it's a fundamental shift. And I think one positive thing which I see, one is in this digital world, location is not so critical. Most MSMEs were constrained by the small places they were present in, irrespective of which sector they were operating in. So access to talent was always an issue. But I think with at least last 2 years, with so much WFH happening, so you can hire a CFO in Mumbai and still work out of, let's say, Nanded, right? What's stopping you? So I think that is changing. So you're becoming more location agnostic. So I think that's one. And secondly, as I mentioned, the new generation which is coming up, I've seen most the sons and daughters of these promoters typically have studied abroad or have traveled abroad and are very, very, have a very open mindset. And they don't want to do what their father and forefathers have been doing for like last 30 to 50 or 100 years. So I think that's a positive sign, but that has to change and they have to adopt to new practices. They have to become very, very open. They may have to hire very, talent at a cost, which they're always afraid of. So I think those fundamental changes have to come in an MSME, and I'm sure that will augur well for them in a long term. It may pinch in the short term, but from a long term perspective, that will be a good strategy to have.
These youngsters also, they need to convince their parents, right? It's also a bit of a clash.
I can tell you, they're very they can argue anything.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I can come in, I think. I think that they're very much the family model, and we see really that the MSMEs they outgrow the family model, and then they need to address what Amanda say, the governance issues, and then also being there to say that I can share my business interest rather than me having everything. I better have 20% of something which becomes 5 times bigger and gradually will grow 20% or 10% a year. So in that sense, there's a lot of the mindset around. I think that the mindset is also very much that cheap is always better, and that doesn't quite help. So and the generational change that Vincent was also referring to, the bringing the sons and daughters in who have studied at internationally at best schools can help there. But what I feel particularly strong about is that we have owners and operators or promoters, but we don't always see really entrepreneurs there. And I think that is something that we could emphasize more on the entrepreneurial skills. So that is opportunity seeking that you were referring to as connecting, that is taking calculated risks. So not always the cheapest, but you can invest if you get some return. Looking at some more of these things. So we need more entrepreneurial dynamism rather than I am an MSME, so I'm weak. I need to be helped, and always looking for a government handout. We just need to get also maturity. We hear some people saying the MSME sector is never heard in consultations. I think that was also mentioned earlier in the conversation this afternoon. But it's also the other way around. So if you want to be heard, you have to also take responsibility and look forward in that sense. And that is a bit more the entrepreneurial skills building that is required. If I then go specifically to manufacturing, I think several mentioned already about the skills ecosystem. It's very much a skills ecosystem that makes us a good welder or a good plumber, a good painter, a good electrician. But who is going to make us a good productivity expert or good manufacturing engineer in that sense? So who is going to help us to connect the dots so that you weld something which then contributes to a value added product? So that is the kind of skills which are also to a certain extent the advanced skills that are needed for the digital transformation. So it's teamwork, cooperation, it is anticipation, and those kind of skills which are not in our skills ecosystem, and maybe there is a need to do that through the skills system, or we need to look also at our whole primary or our main education system, and what the ITIs are doing, what the universities are doing to build this the skills that we take risk, we live in a dynamic way. So it's a capacity to connect, to change, to compete. That is competencies that need to be trained. Thank you.
Nilay.
Yeah, we know that. I think a lot of good points have been made, but I just wanted to start with the FDI question. I think money follows wherever it gets the best return. As simple as that. There is nothing more than that. And as long as MSMEs don't have proper return, no amount of FDI is not going to come to MSMEs. I think there are two things that are happening, Vinod, and speakers have already spoken about it. One is with increasing digitalization of the Indian economy, the tax arbitrage that MSMEs, a lot of micro enterprises worked on, is no longer viable. So I already think, some of that people are realizing, and this, along with the second generation generation family office, which I think are becoming more entrepreneurial, is really, I think, a great opportunity for all of us to work on. I do think what Vincent said about great success story, we don't have too many. I mean, we've got lots of them, but we don't talk too many of them. And I think people need to get exposed to that success stories. And in that context, segregating micro with the small and medium is very, very important. Because otherwise, because the interventions and the trajectory of both of them are very, very different. I also think at a policy or an intervention levels, we need to incentivize. Uh, I don't want to use the word PLI, but something similar to PLI for small going to micro, and small going to medium, and medium going to large. I think that's where they need to incentivize, because that's how FDI is going to come. That's how government is going to earn more revenue, etc. And secondly, intervening and focusing on the second generation entrepreneurs. How can we help them? Because end of the day, they've got the education, they've got the money, they want to prove themselves. What we need to do is actually give them an opportunity to do exactly that.
In fact, this takes me to another point. We had a great discussion yesterday where Vijayji talked about the fact that we don't need skill training for workers. We need skill training. We need training for entrepreneurs, because they don't know what they are doing. Because unless they are trained, everybody else is going to be going through all sorts of problems. And he's, ultimately we cannot say that, the employee is responsible for everything. Finally, it's my money, it's my company, it's my future. So that's at that level. You're absolutely right. We need to have situations where entrepreneurs need to be, I think their capacity needs to be enhanced to be able to exploit the relevant business ecosystem, connect it with people, with the other companies and supply chains wherever required. Also on the business environment level. So we're talking about, we've done a little study of across industrial units across India. We find India scores very low on power reliability. And that acts as a major obstacle, for a business environment. We don't have enough clusters. We used to have, Unido long back created these flatted factories across in Bombay and in Delhi, and in some other places, small places. But we've sort of forgotten it. We're no longer creating clusters. We're no longer creating flatted factories for people, which is a model that China, Vietnam, Korea, they've all put together. So we've not scored even there also. On the other hand, you have this access to finance, indicator. While we are little better than Bangladesh, we are far behind China, Vietnam, Thailand. So there's a lot of scope for improvement as far as the business environment level is concerned. So I would like to start with Rene here, and then we can have comments from everybody else.
Yes, I think
Also,
you give a great.
Sure, Sushma.
If you'll allow me, I want to add one more point to what Vinod sir said. That we talk about so many things. We give subsidies and all, but the kind of entrepreneurs, there is also a target group of entrepreneurs who just want to be left alone and not be bothered because they want to continue doing their business. They are tired, they are tired of paperwork, and they are tired of controlling mechanisms. Our entire policy structure, compliance mechanisms are control oriented. They are not conducive for entrepreneurship. So somewhere these policymakers have to forget that mindset. We talk about mindset about entrepreneurs. What about mindset of policymakers? Making policies only towards with a controlling. So somewhere, I speak for our members, but I feel the pain.
Yes,
gentlemen, I would like to hear your point of view as well.
Yes. Let's start.
I think Sushma, you put a very interesting point across, because we talk about policy making, but essentially what the most important part is that we then create schemes. So we give incentives to people to do certain things, and then we get a group of enterprises that are then just doing these things because there's some subsidy available, and that's exactly the opposite of what we actually want to achieve. We want to take businesses to take on what I was just saying, entrepreneurial capabilities, take the risk, take opportunities, and so on. And Vinod was also referring to that. So we need a more modern industrial policy and manufacturing policy, which is much more data driven, and is much more providing a level playing field, and not wanting to control the industry or do policy with only the wallet. So we need to create other mechanisms for doing that. And I think ultimately it's also not affordable. A government cannot pay for all MSMEs, and why should government pay if it's a profitable business opportunity? So we look more at enabling policy. I think there is lots to go. Vinod, I think we could mount a case for India to look again at, in addition to all the work that's been done on ease of doing business, to look now at we have achieved a lot of progress. The next big thing might be to look at what can we do in terms of an enabling policy and enabling frameworks that creates level playing fields for all, that also then improves governance issues and compliance issues, which would set up better for international buyers and international corporations, as Vincent was saying. I think on the clusters, it came, of course, out of UNIDO long ago, and we all have our different views of clusters nowadays. So it has become, I feel at times, a bit counterproductive to still talk about clusters, because we have clusters, which is the traditional way. So you have a group of hand weavers coming together, and they handlooms coming together and manufacturing something, and that's still there. We have clusters that have come together as a means of a supply chain development. So we also talk about that clusters. We talk also about clusters for manufacturing, related ones, or for innovation. So it has become quite a differentiated approach. But we could go back, and I think that is something that also Ministry, of course, is looking at, the kind of one district, one product for more rural industries and cottage related industries. But that would be more on the micro end. But as I said before, we need horses for courses. We cannot continue with one MSME policy. We have created MSME framework, which is so wide now. So now it's time to differentiate and have different policy components, different incentives that can enable different people. And then we need to bring there in the mindset that it's not paternalistic. We don't have to take care. MSMEs are not people who are vulnerable, who have to be taken care of. Some of them, but many of them are just good entrepreneurs. We need to treat them with respect and dignity.
Absolutely. Hemendra, what's your take on this?
Sure. So I want to make 2 points. One is your point on training for entrepreneurs. I think it's absolutely critical. And I can tell you my experience with MSMEs and startups. Startups who don't even have a business, many of them don't even have a revenue to show, and they raise millions and billions of dollars because they're so articulate. they're so clear in terms of what they want to achieve, and the communication is like flawless. And when you talk to a MSME, despite they have such a long experience, demonstration of their business model and a clear strategy for growth, they are not able to articulate. So I would, this sounds very contradictory to me. And having invested in both of them, sometime I also get worried. In MSME, I invested at EV EBITDA multiples of 5 to 7. Now I'm investing in companies which is pre-revenue. Forget EBITDA, there's not even revenue. So, so I think as an SME forum, we should attempt it. If we can get some good MSMEs and some good startup founders who have raised money in a room and just talk about it, how to go about it. I think that's an art which a lot of MSMEs have to learn. So I think that's one suggestion I have. On Sushma's point on policymakers and their need for their mindset change, I think we also have to, of course, MSME ministry is key and anchor to it. But let's say if you want to make some representation on listing, SEBI becomes critical. If you want to talk about some lending products, Ministry of Finance, RBI becomes critical. If you want to talk about digitalization, Ministry of IT becomes critical. So I think we probably, from a policy perspective, we should enlarge our canvas and not just say that we'll look at one ministry for any policy change or any policy narrative to change. So I think that's probably will work better, and that's where I see a lot of startups are very good at. They go to Niti Aayog, they go to Finance Ministry, they go to RBI, they go to SEBI, and they get their work done, all said and done. So we also probably have to be a little proactive, and being one of the anchor and leading forums in the industry, we also probably need to target multiple ministries and bodies instead of just looking at one or two ministries. I'm sure you are doing it, but that's one suggestion.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Nilay, what's your take on this?
Vinod, I just wanted to share a personal anecdote on the point that I raised about training, and you spoke about it. In one of my organization, I was a managing director leading a particular practice, and I realized that the number of training hours was the maximum for me. And as the young managing director, I said, "Look, I am good. That's why I'm here. Why the hell do you want me to spend so much time doing training and learning?" And I still remember the answers then, because your incompetency can impact so many more people. And I think, I think that's extremely important when we look at capacity building and the entrepreneurs. So I think that just wanted to share that. I think on the point of Sushmaji, I think Sushmaji, your pain was quite visible to us in the question that you talked about. I also think it's a two-way street. I think a lot of the improvement has happened in the way the government and the policymakers have become open about it. But my also experience has been very often as industry, whenever we go to policymakers, we only talk about tax rate, utility rate, and some of those things. Basically saying, give me this, give me this, give me this, give me this. Whereas my experience now has been that if we are approaching policymakers to say that, look, if we do this, this is how it benefits the economy. If we do this, this is what it does. I think there are far more willing ears now. I do understand, and it's a limitation. Many of the policymakers really haven't run businesses, and therefore sometimes it takes time for them to understand and appreciate. But I think there are willing ears on the other side. I just as Hemant said, who we need to engage, not just one ministry, but multiple ministry. And second, how we engage, wherein we are putting a business case as opposed to asking for a dole, is extremely important in the way if we want to make these changes happen. Because in my conversation on the key points that we are discussing, there seems no disagreement. It's a matter of working with them and coming out with policies which are coherent.
Vincent.
Yeah. So I completely agree with Renee. I think the SME sector cannot always be looking for government support, financial support. But what I think where the government could potentially provide support to the SME sector, and maybe in collaboration with in the SME forum, is if you divide it, sectorally, and of course that's already being done, where you do capacity building workshops, consultation sessions, where you educate, where you show success stories of how companies in that particular sector, how they innovated and mechanized and changed maybe their mindset, philosophy, their approach, their systems, their processes, and how they became successful. I think that is maybe a role that the government agencies could play, which will maybe open up the eyes of potential SMEs, entrepreneurs, etc. So rather than giving access to funding, it should maybe be more in the educational sector. That's my 50 cents.
Sushma, it's your turn to ask the final question.
Well, my final question to all the gentlemen is just one. What are the 3 things you feel that India should focus on or work on to support the 5 trillion economy? Very briefly. We can start with Renee.
I thought you would give me some thinking time, but I'll take this. I think India should focus on differentiated policy for the MSME segments. So to have clear strategies for micro enterprises to grow, for new businesses, for startup, and for larger manufacturing enterprises and so on. So it's a time of one size fits all is over. Second one is I come back to the focus on excellence in manufacturing, excellence in entrepreneurship. That would be very useful. And I think I would also add a point which is maybe not so much highlighted in this discussion, but if we want to be an export-oriented, export-led growth, we also need to meet the international expectations which are beyond price. So it's inclusiveness and environmental issues. So looking at the sustainability performance would also be critical. Thank you.
Thank you. Hemendra, what are your top three things?
I think we are already set for a $5 trillion economy. We should try to aim a little higher. That's my personal opinion. Maybe 7 trillion.
So you want to change the goalpost?
Let's change the goalpost. I think the next decade, I'm sure, whether it happens in 2027 or 2028, we will be there at $5 trillion. I have no doubt in my mind. So we should probably change the goalpost, make it $7 trillion by 2030. I hope that probably will help us get a few additional $1 billion. I think first and foremost, we need investments, right? Whether it's domestic capital. Yeah. So we need to if we move, if we need additional $2.5 to $3 trillion, we definitely need $600 to $800 billion worth of investment, right? And look at the capital flow which is happening now. India is the darling destination, whether it is public markets, private market, venture capital. The number of unicorns which are getting created on a weekly basis, sometimes you feel what's going on. So I think MSME should become an attractive investment target. That's very important. And we need to get more private capital. We need to get the cost of capital down. We need to improve the balance sheet of MSMEs. And secondly, which I personally want, a lot of focus on, if we have to achieve this target, and it's a very soft point, is focus on hiring good talent. I think where MSMEs struggle a lot, their own hesitation of hiring people which are talented. They look at it as an expense. A CFO at $100,000, they get nervous about it, but they should look at it as an investment. That's number one. And I can tell you, even people at a higher corporate, in large corporates, are looking for change. Those who are like in mid 40s or late 40s, they are looking for change. They may be small fish in a larger pond, and they want to be a larger fish in a smaller pond. And MSME is a good. They're joining startups, right? So MSME is also a good sort of hunting ground for them, where they can come in, and that's where I think a lot of MSMEs have to look at creating ESOP pools. Again, I'm not totally tuned in how good or bad are they in doing it, but they have to have talent and build skin in the game. If you give 20% on ESOP pool, give 10% to a CEO, and 3% to CFO, and 2% to the head of marketing, and give them an opportunity to make few $1 million in the journey. I think we have to bring that culture if we have to hire and retain talent for a long time.
So Vincent, what are your 3 points?
I would say collaborate, co-develop, and create the, like Renee is saying, the level playing field, be in sync with international standards. I think SMEs, if they want to grow, they don't have to do it alone. They should, they could potentially find the right partners from Europe, and share knowledge, share best practices, create, improve their own systems and processes, create and develop new products, do R&D jointly. And collectively they can then produce their products for the domestic and international markets. So not alone, but in collaboration with the right partners.
Okay, so the last person to go for the last 3 points is Nilay.
Yeah, my 3 points are I agree with Renee, I agree with Vincent, and I agree with Hemant. But on a more serious note, I think 2 or 3 points quick. One, I think we need to actively, as a culture, discourage jugaad. We've had so much of sense of in the MSME segment. There's so much of pride on jugaad and thing. I think it's not good for scaling up. That's number one. Second, I think there is this whole, whether you call it skilling, I would call it a coaching ecosystem for our second generation family thing. I see increasingly very large pool of people who have burned themselves out first 20 years working in the corporate sector, available with rich experience, how we can leverage that to bring them to at reasonable cost to this entire ecosystem is something forums like India SME can play a big role, which will benefit them. And third part is, I think Renee's point on differentiated policy is important, but more importantly for policy makers to understand MSME is everywhere. It's not just in the Ministry of MSME. It's in the Ministry of Textile. It's in the Ministry of IT. It's the Ministry of Steel. It is in the Ministry of Defense. It's in every ministry. MSME doesn't sit in Ministry of MSME. It just coordinates, and therefore every ministry has to think MSME.
Excellent. I just said one more point, that we need to work on more how do we orient our entire entrepreneurs, our next generation with knowledge, and how do we orient them towards innovation, because that is the only thing that I feel you guys missed out. So I just thought of adding my 2 bits to it back. So it was lovely talking to all of you. We will hopefully have a chat again today. We broke the record again today after yesterday's session. We've had 1,892 people online today watching this session. So we've got lots of comments, but they're long. All of them are very, very long, so I don't want to show all of them here. But we will respond back to every comment that we receive, and we will get back to everybody who has been, watching and commenting on with various issues or everything else. I think we'll also display Sushmaji's number, email ID, so that you guys can write to her and figure out in terms of the questions that you have. She will come back to all of you. So with that, back to you, Sushmaji, and thank you to all my wonderful guests today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. It was such a pleasure speaking with each one of you. Experience has been enriching as always, and there's so much to learn. It's never enough. And each time we talk, each year, we make new resolves, and we want to do better and better. And it cannot happen without your support. So, of course, as Vincent said, in the forthcoming time, I wish to collaborate, work with each one of you, your organizations, and very, very actively and promptly contribute to building our economy much sooner than what we have, made a target. As Hemendra said, instead of making it 7, I would like to add 1 0 to the, the target number. So with that,
50 years.
of course, I mean, that is that much potential. Yes, so
Cool.
India has that potential, and startups and our youngsters and the new unicorns, it's not difficult to achieve at all. So with that thought, keep safe, have a great evening, and thanks. So that brings us to the end of the special focus session today. Thank you. Thank you, Vinod sir, for, as always,
Pleasure.
to ask all the interesting questions and making it as entertaining. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sushma. Thank you, Vinod. Thank you, everybody.
Businesses count on IT heroes to save the day every day. And now that the office can be anywhere, you need the unrivaled built-for-business PC platform that offers the manageability and security IT heroes need on the premium laptops your teams want. The Intel Evo vPro platform gives you the superpowers to do it all. This totally integrative package gives your team an unrivaled business laptop experience that's ready to get to work whenever and wherever they are. It also helps maximize productivity and collaboration and lets your team stay in the zone all day long. Plus, the Intel Evo vPro platform provides the security, manageability, and stability you need to be the greatest IT hero the world's ever seen. It provides comprehensive hardware-based security with below-the-OS protection, application and data security, and advanced threat detection. It gives you the power to update, restore, and secure your fleet remotely, even if a system is outside the firewall and won't boot. And smooth PC fleet management is yours with the reliable, validated, and stable platform that helps ensure image and driver compatibility when you add new devices. The Intel Evo vPro platform, built to do what IT heroes need and users want. It's built for business.
Welcome back. With that, we have come to an end of a 10-day long deliberation and discussion, which is ending today on account of International MSME Day. We have had many learnings, and we have also noted many pointers from all the experts that we have been speaking for last 10 days. And we are definitely creating a roadmap, strategizing, and creating initiatives to be able to achieve this target of 5 trillion economy sooner than envisioned. I would like to mention once again that India SME Forum is 87,000 plus members strong organization. We have 9 lakh plus subscribers whom we on a continuous basis facilitate, support, mentor, and keep exchanging information on how to help their business support, grow their business in any way possible. Let me also tell you that while we spoke about innovation, IP, knowledge systems, and so on, India SME Forum has its own IP Facilitation Center, which is called the Center for Intellectual Property Research, Promotion and Facilitation. Please log on to our site www.ciprpf.com. We have our centers based in Mumbai and Delhi, and our IP officers will be more than glad to help you and facilitate in any of your trademark, patent, copyright requirements. We will also be able to help and facilitate reimbursements from the Ministry of MSME through their IP facilitation scheme. At India SME Forum, we also have an incubation and a training center under the aegis of ACED, that's the short form, and we call it the Asian Center for Economic and Entrepreneurship Development and Education. On your screens, we have the ACED website. It's www.aced.com. For any of your training requirements, mentoring requirements, please feel free to reach out to us on aced.com. I am very also glad to mention that India SME Forum has 7,000 plus women entrepreneurs as its members, and it in its continuous endeavor to help women be empowered through entrepreneurship and gain economic independence. We have also tied up and we are in fact doing a joint initiative with the National Commission for Women and different state governments, where we are running programs to help aspiring as well as existing women entrepreneurs in making their businesses more sustainable, scale their businesses, and if they are at idea stage, we would also like to help them set up their businesses. So for any of such requirements relating to your enterprise, entrepreneurship, please write to me on dg@indiasmeforum.com. Once again, thanks to all our viewers, ISF members who have been so supportive and who have stayed with us all along for more than a decade now, and who have always contributed with their suggestions, recommendations, and ideas which have helped us put forth these recommendations to the right people, right ministries, and adopting the right channels. So thank you once again. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank my team at India SME Forum, who have been working tirelessly to put together these initiatives always. So once again, congratulations to each one of you, and wish you all a very happy MSME Day and many more to come. Thank you very much. This is Sushma Morthania signing off for today. Keep safe and have a great evening.
The Intel vPro platform is built for business and lets us manage our PC fleet remotely. It's like our entire fleet is spread across the galaxy. And we have hardware-based security to defend against attacks. So we can secure and manage them without disturbing anyone.
Get performance, security, manageability, and stability for the entire PC fleet.